So, our last speaker today is Kamil Witecki. Kamil is an experienced architect and chief engineer at Nokia. He can program in a plethora of languages, but normally sticks to C++ and Lua. He has so many interests that he can hardly focus on just one. So he loves literature and abstract humor and also plays the guitar. He has recently developed a taste for a healthy lifestyle. You may remember Kamil from so many previous code dives. There was no way he was missing it this year. So, Agile versus waterfall. Are these oil and water? Kamil, the cyberspace is yours.
Thank you very much for introduction. Yes, I'm Kamil Witecki. Welcome to my session at Code Dive 2021. This year we are doing it online. The session will take around 45 minutes. Should you have any questions, there will be chat box or Slack somewhere that you can use to ask me. And I will be there online having direct conversation with you. And I consider this is quite a good thing because we are no longer limited to simple yes or no questions, but we can have actual interaction and exchange our opinions. And this year, I would like to tell you how I see decision-making and approach to methodologies in computer science, in projects. And before we'll go deep, few disclaimers. The presentation is intended for educational purposes only, and the views and opinions I will be giving you are my own. They are not endorsed, authorized by Nokia or any person or institution it refers to. Having said that, why I want to tell you what I think about architecture, what I think about decision making? Well, I have seen plenty of different videos, plenty of different trainings that were using some tricks to polarize the audience and telling us that one is ultimately bad and the other one is the one you should be using, the one that is your holy grail. And I disagree, because each and every option might have something good for you, and it will depend on the project you are working with that you will need to figure out how to approach it. How it usually works is that we have some kind of a sales pitch. For example, in 20th century, if I remember correctly, or beginning of 21, there was Get Mac campaign by Apple. And it was brilliant piece of an advertisement. I really appreciate it. The problem with it, it's advertisement, and this kind of approach I do not accept in trainings. Meaning we have two different persons there, and they will have different traits. First of all, it will work on very simple biases like physical looks. Other than that, we will have some other traits that are not so obvious. So one person will be that shy person who cannot keep an eye contact, looks a little bit distracted and anxious. And in general, that might not be the most trustworthy person on earth. And there will be this other person, this very confident, sharp, someone with a plan and who makes all decisions just in time. And obviously, that person has everything in control, and the whole universe works for that person. So having said that, having established what traits these persons will have, somebody will now assign labels arbitrarily. So if I will be giving you Agile speech, well, I would assign the labels this way. The Agile guy would be confident, focused, just in time, and razor sharp, because he makes these decisions on a spot. There is functionality to decide about, and this guy just jumps in, makes the decision, saves the day, and goes for a beer with a team. And the insecure guy, that will be obviously the waterfall guy. Nothing stops me from assigning these labels vice versa. So I could simply swap these labels and tell that waterfall guy is the guy with plan. He is the one confident because he has planned everything. He's focused because he knows what he has in his control. He's just in time or even ahead of time, what arguably might be better. And last but not least, he's razor sharp. He knows what he's working with. He has budgets. He has everything planned. Nothing can surprise him. Do not fall for this pitfall. It just some way of selling. It's not necessarily best for decision choices. You will be better enabling your critical thinking and selecting what is good from both worlds. And I want to present you third option, something that I am using, and hopefully you will find some value in it. You will find it worth your time, and maybe it will help you become better at what you are doing. And so, I will have 3 messages for you, 3 things I want you to remember. If you should leave that speech with just 3 things to remember, this is it. Your decisions will cost. That cost will be paid either today, or you will have to pay it in future if you have to change your decision. And that cost will determine how important your decision is. The bigger the cost, the bigger the importance. Second of all, what usually is not told in methodologies trainings that I have seen is that the world is not only about use cases. Yes, customers are interested in use cases mainly, but there are also different things, orthogonal in that sense, that we need to take into account, and that's environment. So some kind of a box that we will be targeting, and that box will have some constraints. We do not have unlimited resources. We need to take into consideration the environment. And development aspects, business aspects. We have some company, we might need to scale it one day, we might need to introduce new products, we might change something, we might need to replace obsolete devices. This will be about the development aspect. The world is not only use cases, it's also environment and development. And last but not least, urgent is not necessarily important. For example, when you wake up in the morning, the very first thing you wanna do is go shopping and buy some bread for breakfast. Simple as that. That decision is urgent. You need to decide now what kind of bread you will buy or what you will wear going to that shop because you want to eat breakfast. There is some hard deadline. You do not want to eat your breakfast in the evening, obviously. It is urgent in some way. This is important if you will go there in a tuxedo or tracksuit. I doubt. In my opinion, that decision is urgent. It's not important. Do not let others tell you otherwise. And if somebody tells you you have to make that decision because it's urgent, well, maybe it's urgent, but maybe it's not you who have to make that decision because it might not be important for you. Okay. Now, few examples of things that I would like to always consider in a project. And this isn't exhaustive list. There will be different aspects that you will need to consider and plan ahead. This is something I would like you to keep in your mind and at least check if that is a factor that plays major role in my development, in my company, in my project. And I would like to start with latency. Latency is about how fast I get a response to given request. And it will differ from project to project. We'll have very constrained projects, for example, telecommunication business or automatics and robotics, where we will have hard deadlines. If we miss that deadline, the whole work that we did is worthless. We will not make a call, we will break the robot, whatever takes. We need to meet the deadline. And there will be different kind of projects, like web applications. You send a request, you get a response, it's rendered in your web browser, and you can set up some budget, for example, 500 milliseconds for that round trip. Yet, if you miss it, nobody will make a problem out of it. The user will somehow swallow the fact that he got that response, that the page rendered after 1 second. So this limit is not that hard, it's soft, it's relaxed. If you will keep consistently missing it, like every request will be delayed, or you will keep missing it by a big margin, for example, it will not take 500 milliseconds but 10 seconds, then yes, it's a problem. But you have some degree of freedom, and as long as 90% of your requests, and that's arbitrary number that I just made up, if 90% of your requests are done in time, you will be good with it. So latency, please consider it. It is not necessarily a factor for your specific case. You might be having this kind of relaxed requirement. It is always there. If you have listened to a presentation by Maciej Norberczak, he has some compelling point about everything being real-time system, and I recommend watching if you didn't done it yet. Latency is one thing. Another thing are the resources in general. So we will have memory, RAM or flash, CPU, and bandwidth. And with these resources, again, this might be hard constraints. We will have just given amount of RAM and we cannot use anymore. For example, we have an embedded device. It's a box, it has some RAM soldered in. There is thousands or millions around the world, and we need to write new software for it. We need to meet that budget. And that's it. We have 768 megabytes available. There is no magic to increase it. We might compress it, yes, but the limit is the limit. And if you are working in this kind of environment when you have this very strict, hard limitations, you might consider setting a little bit lower threshold just for yourself to learn early that you are approaching that boundary. And the same will apply to flash, for example. Your binary sizes will grow, and one day you might not fit them anymore in that device. CPU cycles, or bandwidth of integrated network controller. On the other hand, you might be working with a cloud project, and cloud project arguably has infinite resources. You can just buy more RAM or more CPU or more disk space. It is virtually infinite, but in fact, you are doing some business. And your customers who will be paying for that cloud will not want to pay infinite money for your infinite RAM usage. So this will be now not anymore about environment where you work, but it will be about your business. Are you able to provide more value than your competition for the money they spend? Now, we have changed the axis. It's no longer environment. It is more relaxed because we can optimize. I will use a little bit more RAM, but I will deliver way more value. Still, we need to consider it. It's not infinite, but it is not as hard as in embedded devices where you have hard limits and you cannot change it. And another thing that will require you thinking about it if it needs your planning is compatibility. You might be working with kind of a project that I like to call torpedo projects. You just have the project, you finish it, somebody accepts, you ship it, and you forget about it. And it's cool. You do not have to think about compatibility whatsoever. It doesn't exist. That project is gone. It was one in a lifetime story, flash in the pan. There will be other projects that will last ages. Some projects are maintained for half of century now. And if you are working in this business, it will be a big deal to keep compatibility. There will be a lot of devices, a lot of applications working together in one way or another as an intricate puzzle, and some pieces will fall out. Some pieces will get obsolete. Your piece might get obsolete. So whenever you will be replacing that device, you want to create something that is compatible with the rest of the system. If it is other device falling out, you need to be ready for these signals from the future that you will need to interpret correctly, or at least not panic when you receive something that you don't understand. On the other hand, one day your device might get obsolete, and it will need to be replaced, and somebody would like not only to replace it as exactly same box, because then it will provide no value. Somebody will want to provide new features and will need to fit in the boundaries that you have created back then. Backward compatibility and forward compatibility in this kind of business will be crucial. And last but not least of the examples I want to give you is a programming language. And there will be different factors related to programming languages. They will let you optimize different things. For example, you can go for C++. If you have access to programmers and you need to control memory allocations and you are aiming for real-time, hard real-time requirements, that might be a good choice for you. On the other hand, you might go for Python, Lua, JavaScript, anything like that, if you want to have access to bigger pool of programmers, to something that is easier to introduce somebody to. And with JavaScript and Python, you might have hard time with predictability of garbage collection. Lua, on the other hand, it will probably not have that many users, at least from what I observed, it is not very popular language, but it will give you best from both worlds. It's simple, it's scripting language, it might be just in time compiled, and it gives you control over garbage collection, so you can have that predictability. And having that considered early enough might save you from rewriting your whole code base from scratch. And it happened to me that I was involved in a project that selected not so well-suited language for execution. We managed to deliver. It was a success story in the end, but the journey to get there and meet all the real-time requirements that we had in the meantime with that unpredictable garbage collection, that was quite a challenge for everyone. Consider these things. They might not be a problem for you today, but one day you will be in a project when that might play a role. And another thing is this development of your company. Because if you select the language that you and your friend love, it's cool, you wanted to make a project out of it for a long time, you start company, you are CEO, your friend is CTO, but in fact you're just programmers with fancy names. You develop your first version, you demo it to someone, and he invests. And the person invests big. You get a lot of money, you now need to scale that business. You need to hire 100 programmers and go fast. And it turns out that in your vicinity, you two are the only people who like that programming language and nobody else uses it. You will have hard time then scaling your company. That's different aspect. And maybe there are languages that become popular very fast, but if you need to scale your business one day, be sure you have people to source. So this is my list of examples. By no means it's exhaustive. If you have some ideas, use that chat box, use that Slack, and let me know what comes to your mind. I might learn something from you as well, and I will be grateful for that. And now an example of counter arguments that I hear often when talking about it. And it is just a matter of optimization now. Of course it is. I will give you that. It is just a matter of optimization now. The deadline is tomorrow, and we need to reduce memory usage by half. Good luck with that. It's just optimization now, but it's a lot of work. So it is not that simple. And you cannot guess right latency or like memory usage for each step either way. I will give you that too. I have no idea how each and every use case in system will work, and I have no idea how much memory or latency budget they will use. And due to that, I will not ask you to guess right. What I will be asking you is to have some high-level picture. You have some system, and you will need to decide how much memory you have. If you have embedded device, it's simple. It has the 768 megabytes of RAM available. Some part goes to operating system. That's a must unless you do it bare metal. And then you have some for your application. You go a little bit lower to have some safety margin. That's your budget for your whole system for all the applications that you are deploying. Simple as that. If you know more or less what pieces will be there, I don't know, database, front-end, back-end controller, then you might split that budget between the applications, but do not go too far. You do not want to micromanage these things. You do not want to have plan for next few years. We are taking from waterfall here what is good for us. We are taking this more or less view on the big picture and setting up CI so that when you develop functionalities in an agile way, you learn quickly if you are going out of budget. And this way, you can start optimization just in time. The last argument that I'm hearing is that you do not need to pay that optimization cost just in time, because if you wait until end of the project, you need to apply just the right amount of optimization. You need to just optimize enough to fit that box. And it's very, very, very good argument in different world. Because in this world, optimization is not just something that you add on top or subtract. It's not like cutting a fat. It's like losing a fat on a person. It takes running, it takes new diet. And in case of optimization, it might take changing crucial pieces of your system. For example, it might be that the database that you have selected in the beginning is using too much memory, and now your whole application depends on that database and data structure exposed by it, and you need to overhaul everything. The problem is that if you had that CI setup back then, now you wouldn't be in that problem. You would have detected it earlier, and you would generate less debt. Yes, you would still generate some, but less, and you will react faster, generating less debt, having faster feedback, and giving that feedback to your planning people so they can have proper relations with customers, engaging them early that, hey, we have some kind of an issue that we need to mitigate. If you learn just one day before deadline, there is little room. Customers are expecting that software tomorrow. If you start engaging them early enough, you too can have meaningful discussion about mitigation actions. So adding just right amount of optimization on last day sounds cool, doesn't work, not in this world, really. Unless you are very lucky, and if you are very lucky, let me know. I would like to play Lotto with you. Now an example of a project where all this will not be a big deal. If you are doing batch processing of, for example, movies, it will take weeks or months to render the whole movie. And if you are concerned about latency and predictability in that case of project, I doubt. Because one still frame might take 47 seconds to render. Next still frame that has exactly same content will take 48 because garbage collection ran during that specific frame, and nobody will notice. In the end, that whole cost will be amortized and nobody waits for specific still frame. And the same will be about memory, CPU, all these other aspects. If you are working in cloud, you are doing this batch processing in cloud, you are generating a lot of value, you have huge budget, it might be just acceptable to use that more RAM, to buy it to render your movie. So this is kind of relaxed project where you can grab a cup of coffee and forget about all these things after you have thought if they apply. If they don't apply, enjoy your project. There will be different kind of projects and we will get to them at the end. Now I would like to give you some intel into how to approach decision making in such case. We had examples what to consider, but now how do I know it's important or urgent to make that decision? Well, let's get to it. First of all, what is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. Dwight D. Eisenhower said that, or is associated with that quote, and it simply means that if something is really important, you would rather make the right choice and use more time to gather more data to be sure it is the right one, because the cost of changing that decision will be huge. And if something is urgent, obviously now, if it is urgent, it is probably not that important, because it's more important in that case to make that decision quickly rather than make the right choice. There will be also cases where it is both important and urgent, and not important, not urgent. So how to play around it? Well, we have so-called Eisenhower Matrix. It is a tool from time management, And it is a tool that we will be using for our decision making too. We have important and urgent on two axes, and of course something might be important or not, or urgent or not. And now wherever our decision fits in that quadrant, we will do different thing about it. If it is important and urgent, this is something for you to own, to act, to do it right now. This is important, meaning it requires your attention, and it is urgent, it cannot wait. Act. Then we will have things that are important, not necessarily urgent. You have your time. Plan it. Find people who might give you second, third, fourth opinion, another point of view on it. Gather the data. Find a slot in your calendar where you will actually approach that decision. Gather all the intel in the world to make just the right choice. Urgent, but not important on the other hand, is something that you would like to delegate. First of all, you want to have more time for important stuff, and that is your own selfish thing to do, to optimize what you work with. Then it is also an opportunity for others, so don't be opportunity stealer. Let guys who you delegate it to gain something from it. They might, for example, by making the decision by themselves, optimize their workplace. They will select a tool they are comfortable with, select a tool they like to use, or select the one that optimizes their workflow. Or even if they cannot select something they like, they will have an opportunity in learning, in decision making. Maybe this will be the time when they will consider going to lecture like this one, because they would like to learn how to make good decisions. Or they already know it and they will learn to own the decision. They will learn that accountability. Do not strip them from that opportunity, delegate things. Last but not least are things that are not important and not urgent. And I said last but not least, but actually they are the list. This is things that you want to remove, you want to forget about them, do not waste time on them. And to me, one thing that always falls in that quadrant of not important, not urgent, someone down there, ideally nowhere, is tabs versus spaces. A discussion that is alive for such a long time, and I would like to use it as an example of both not important and not urgent things. And if you disagree, it's fine. Chat box somewhere there or Slack somewhere there. Let's have a discussion on it. If I don't convince you, maybe you will convince me. I feel I already used too much time speaking about it, but we will get back to it in a minute again. So the problem now is we want to work in that quadrant of important and urgent most of the time. And if we have something important but not urgent, we want to postpone it until it becomes urgent. So we want to plan it somewhere in our calendar. How do we know if it's important or urgent? This is the question. Knowing technique is one thing, but knowing how to actually weigh your decision, figure out where it fits, that's another story. And the problem is there is no yardstick that you just put to your decision and yep, it scales 10 on my yardstick, so this is it. There is no such thing. And I will not give you ready-made answer like a checklist. If this is this, and that decision is important, or these decisions are important, these are not. Unfortunately, maybe such thing exists, but I don't know it. If it exists, let me know, chat box again. And if it doesn't exist, I have developed some other system to weigh my decisions. And to me, urgency and importance both are some kind of a spectrum. So this given thing might fall from not until very important or very urgent. We will start now with urgency. Things will be not important, not urgent or important, and Not important things are things that are just a matter of convenience, things that are just a matter of taste. And you see how I am going back to this tabs versus spaces again. It is just a matter of taste. You will never satisfy all people in the world. Somebody will tell you that they want tabs because of their own reasons. Somebody will tell you that they want spaces because of their own reasons. That guy will tell he wants 2 spaces. Other guy will want 4 spaces. Somebody will want 8 spaces, and you will never agree because it's just a matter of taste. And there is probably not that urgent to find out a solution. You will not satisfy everyone. You want to figure out things that are urgent. And what is urgent are things that will be blocking any progress in your company, or the ones that will cause major net losses due to delay. For example, you approach a milestone where you have to select the database. And if you do not select database, no work can be done anymore. So your company stops producing value until you make that decision. It is urgent now. Or there are major net losses. So somebody comes to you and tells you, no problem, take your time. It's just you have these contractual fines. If you will not make that decision, it's okay. We will swallow it. You will just pay us $1 million for every day of not making that choice. This is urgent too. There is real money behind it. You are either not generating it or you are losing it. But there is some cost involved, and it is urgent because the sooner you make that decision, the sooner you start generating or the sooner you stop paying. Do we get it? Urgent, blocks any progress, or causes major losses if not done. So how about important? Again, a spectrum. Not important, too important again. And what is not important is things that have virtually no long or short-term impact. Meaning, if you make that choice or that choice, things will be more or less the same. And costs will be the same, and quality of work will be the same. So there is no impact. You made some choice, but whoever can tell from external perspective, if not, then it's not important. Or you make a decision, it has big impact, but it has virtually no cost to change it. So you can make that decision today. Tomorrow you might change your mind. Oh, right, we went left. You know what, guys? We go right now. But it costs us nothing, so it's not a problem, really. Again, back to tabs versus spaces, Clang format, A-style. Every afternoon or every midnight, you can run Clang format and change it tabs to spaces. Odd days, tabs. Even days, spaces. Tabs, spaces, virtually no cost of change. Yes, there will be some CPU time. There will be some delay when the code base is changed, but it virtually has no cost of change. If you want, you can even run it on your personal PC. If you disagreed with the whole team, they have bad taste, but you had the good one, and they selected tabs, for example, you want spaces, you can be running it in your own PC, have that comfortable working conditions for you. And then before you commit, you just run it again, this time with different set of rules that will convert again to the spaces that you decided but you don't like, so you use these tabs. So it has virtually no cost of change associated, and therefore it's not important. You can guess now what will be important, and this will be things that will require overhaul of whole code base. So you need to scratch everything you have produced, waste it, and start over. Or there will be huge penalties associated. And again, personal story. In one project I was working in, a decision was made 15 years before I joined that we will use some inter-process communication library. And now, after all these years, we have realized that we pay a lot in license fees, but we do not get any value from that library anymore, and it becomes ball and chain for us. It drags us back. So what we can do about it now? If we put legal, moral, and ethical aspects aside, we have at least 3 options. keep paying for it, obvious, or stop paying for it but still use it. That might be a legal issue and ethical and moral. That's why we put it aside. And third thing, resign from it. But since whole code base was written around that IPC library, now we need to overhaul this whole code base. It was a tough one, and we finally made a decision around it, and it was the legal choice, so we are still paying for these licenses while overhauling code slowly but steadily, not to disrupt anything. But in the end, there were two decisions, and both of them were important. That decision of ours was important because there could have been penalties associated, or it would require overhaul of whole code base. The first decision done 15 years ago was important as well, because cost of changing that decision now was huge. So your decision that you take right here, right now, might have some probable impact in future. And I said probable because you have no idea if it will be changed or not. You need to take into consideration that probability of future changes, and if it's zero, then no worries. Even changing it would be very costly, but since probability is zero, then it means it will not happen, then it's not important. And if that probability is, I don't know, 75%, and it's very costly, then it means that virtually 75% of this cost will be paid one day. And this is important. So it's about probability of things happening in future that will determine what you should do about your decision. And obviously cost today will determine how you make the decision and how much time you spend on decision making. So this is important. Urgency was about things that might incur costs or might drag down your company if not done fast. Importance, on the other hand, are things that will require a lot of work, a lot of costs. Not necessarily today, might be 15 years in future, but that cost is there somewhere. Just to recap, we have these important and urgent things or not, and we want to do something about them. We want to work in that top left quadrant, the important urgent decision. This is the space where we act. This is what we want to be doing. If it's important and not urgent, we can keep postponing it until it becomes urgent. And this is the time when we make that decision. So just in time when it becomes urgent, find a time in your calendar, first of all, to do the research on it, and second of all, to actually make that decision. So this is the time I am making that decision. At this point, it becomes urgent to me because I decided so, and then it moves to this act quadrant. If it is not important but urgent, find someone for whom it is important, ideally, and delegate it. That person will have a benefit of optimizing that choice for the team, for the person, or whoever else, and will have an opportunity in learning. We might learn decision making, might learn accountability, delegate it. Find someone ideally for whom that thing is important, so for that person, this becomes act now type of task. And last but not least, remove source of concern. Tabs or spaces, things that we shouldn't be discussing, things that we ideally wouldn't be deciding about, or we will just toss a coin and let it decide for us. Remove source of concern in any way possible. If you can, skip it, skip it. If you can, make a random choice. And if I didn't convince you about tabs and spaces, right now Slack and chat box might be full of different comments, and I am waiting for it eagerly. And I promised you that there will be different kind of project that I will tell you about, and this will be medical business or robotics. In that kind of project, any error going out of latency budget or out of RAM might be a matter of life or death, literally or figuratively. And in this case, predictability of garbage collector will be important. If you stop that motor in precise time, it's successful surgery. If you stop it a little bit too late because garbage collection ran just before the signal was sent to the motor, it might be a tragedy. In case of this kind of projects, the stuff I gave you as an examples will be ultra important. On the other hand, if you are working with robotics, for example, you have numerically controlled laser cutting machine. If it crashes while laser is still on, it might never turn off that laser. You can imagine consequences. And with that strong message, I would like to close just to recap 3 things I would like you to remember. First, your decisions will have costs associated to them. The cost will be today or tomorrow. Either you will need to pay it or not. It might be some kind of probability associated to it. And last but not least, it will be big, it will be small. It's up to you to figure that out. The world is not only about functionality. Functionality is what customers pay for, yes, but environment and development use cases, how you develop your company and what box you are targeting, what are your constraints, this is something you will need to consider even if customer doesn't want to hear about it because for them it just cost. And last but not least, urgent and important, 2 different things. Sometimes they coincidentally are both a factor for that decision, but you will have a lot of things that are either not urgent but important or not important but urgent. Make sure you know where in the decision quadrant Eisenhower Matrix that specific thing falls in so that you know what to do about it. Thank you very much for your attention. I'm Kamil Witecki. Here we end the conversation. Here we end the presentation. If you have any questions to me, use that chat box or an email address you have on the screen. That's all from me. Goodbye.
Kamil Witecki, thank you very much indeed. So, this is it for this year's Code Dive. This year we've had 14 talks, 2 streams, a very brave group of Nokians preparing the conference, 1 virtual escape room, 1 video crew making it happen for us online, and of course you, the one and only Code Dive audience. Thanks for joining. Don't forget about Hack Dive, our virtual escape room. The game is about to start on our website. My name is Rafał Motriuk. I'm a science and technology journalist. It was, as ever, a great pleasure being your host. Thank you for having me. Goodbye and see you again.